Issues 17 and 18 of Combat Patrol, the Termagants, come out to play. Hello and welcome to The Lucky Roll, an eclectic channel for eclectic games. And today we're going to be doing issues 17 and 18 of our continuing series of Warhammer Combat Patrol by Hachette collection. Now this issue comes with 10 Termagants and 1 Ripper Swarm. Now I have some of them built here, but I also have some of the sprues on offer here. So they're unfortunately spread over 2 issues, which to be honest I think is a little bit mean. But nevertheless, the good thing about that is it gives a little bit more room for lore in some of the issues. Now the first issue comes with 2 sprues and the second issue comes with all the bases and the final sprue that you will need to make it. Now let's have a look at issue 17 before we continue. You start of course with the how to build guide, but you won't be able to build the complete model until you get the second issue. It also goes into life in the Imperium. Now this is an interesting bit of lore because life in the Imperium is well, I wouldn't say it's worth living. It's a fairly horrible existence. Human beings are largely reduced to kind of feudal serfs. If you're not toiling in the factories, you're serving in the Imperial Guard, or you are starving. The Imperium is built basically on fear and brutality, and the whole Imperium is just geared towards keeping the Imperial Guard fed, armed, and ready to take on all comers. Imperial worlds do differ. There'll be agri worlds, there'll be hive worlds, there would be manufacturing worlds, there'll be kind of Imperial Guard worlds, but they all have one purpose, which is basically to the greater good. And you would have a whole world dedicated to one such function. Death in the Imperium is also not so very nice. If you are a fairly successful soldier, your bones might be cleansed and blessed and kind of put up for worship for pilgrims to kind of basically make a pilgrimage to you and thank you for your service. If you are a factory worker, you will just be kind of reduced into something called corpse starch and fed to other factory workers. Or if you are a very good serf or a Space Marine servant or a very loyal one, they might honor you by putting you into a servo skull, which is essentially like a floating iPad that the Space Marines would use to kind of access various doors or things. Now, there's also the Adeptus Mechanicus, which would be the tech priests. Now, they are famous for replacing their bodies with iron and augmented limbs and artificial organs and basically trying to live as long as possible. So, of course, as you can see here from, to be honest with you, quite wonderful artwork. They look less human the further they go on. So they have little sentimentality when it comes to their actual appearance, but will supplement themselves to kind of, for functions, for example, they'll replace eyes or they'll replace hands with quills, things like that. You also have here the first founding chapters. So these would be the first chapters of the Space Marines, dating back to the Horus Heresy. And you have a nice little synopsis here on all of them. So you have the Dark Angels, the White Scars, the Space Wolves, the Imperial Fists, the Blood Angels, the Iron Hands, the Ultramarines, the Salamanders, and the Raven Guard. Now, these would be the Loyalist chapters. There's a few traitor chapters that are not listed here, but they're kind of persona non grata as far as the Imperium is concerned. You have also Hive Fleet Adaptions. So this is interesting as well because it shows you different types of the Tyranid Hive Fleets. So everything we've seen so far has been Leviathan, but there's also Hive Fleet Behemoth. You have Hive Fleet Hydra, Cronus, Kraken, and Jormungandr. Jormungandr. I'm afraid I'm not too au fait with that one. But nevertheless, you can see that there's different kind of color schemes here. So if you haven't actually painted your Tyranids up yet, there's some nice little selections there for you to kind of go for. You have the Tools of War, which is a little kind of short fiction story on the manufactoriums in the Imperium. You have some more rules, such as command points and stratagems. And you have a scenario 13, which is called Bring It Down, in which Space Marines are trying to take down the Psychophage in a little scenario with a victory or loss, depending on for the Space Marines. So that's issue 17. Issue 18 comes with the paint guide. So issue 17 had the assembly guide, 18 has the paint guide, so it shows you how to kind of paint them in High Feet Leviathan. It also gives you some interesting lore on the hive worlds. So as I said, the hive worlds would have different functions. So the hive worlds itself would be kind of mainly factories that would kind of make the tools and weapons for the Imperium, and they would be kind of riddled with gangs in the lower aspects of it. Now there's a whole side game called Necromunda in which you can fixate on the gang warfare on the planet Necromunda. But a hive city would have a lot of spires, so it kind of goes up way into the sky, kind of like an anthill. And the higher up in the spire you are, the more prestige and the easier your living will be, and the lower down in the spire you are, the nastier things are, and that is where the bulk of the gang warfare would take place. You also have death worlds, which are just basically planets that are very, very hostile to human life. So hostile to human life that anyone who survives there is automatically brilliant for the Imperial Guard, and the Catachan jungle fighters are among the most famous, that they are very, very hard to kill and very little phases them given how hostile their original worlds are. You also have Bale, which is the home of the Blood Angels. Now, the Blood Angels are a chapter, one of the original chapters. Their Primarch was killed by Horus, so they have a very interesting form of bloodlust. They're constantly angry. They drink the blood of sanguinians to kind of turn into Blood Angels, but they also are susceptible to the Black Rage. So at some point in the Blood Angel's life, he's just going to lose it and get so angry he can't come back and will be lost to the chapter. There's only one, I believe, the chaplain, who has been able to come back from the Black Rage, but nevertheless, the rest of them, once they've succumbed to it, they are lost. Their planet, Bale, is obviously revered by them, but it's a nuclear hellhole. It's been blasted so many times by nukes that it's not a very nice place to live. You also have Fenris, which is the home of the Space Wolves, a very famous chapter of the Space Marines, a very popular one with the fans as well. They're all very Viking-based, but of course, it's a horrible, cold, scary world, not unlike Skyrim in the sense that they're all kind of Viking-type warriors that kind of have a fixation with wolves and the cold. But nevertheless, Fenris, of course, is their home planet. You also have successor chapters. So you have the founding chapters, but the chapters will split up into kind of other different chapters. So you have here, of course, the Unnamed, so that the Unnamed will be a Dark Angels chapter, but they call themselves the Unnamed because they feel shame about the secrets of the Dark Angels. You have the Dark Hunters, the Wolf Spear. The Wolf Spear, of course, would be a spin-off from the Space Wolves. The Black Templars would be a very famous chapter, actually. They are, I believe, aligned with the Iron Fists. You have the Flesh Terrors. You have the Sons of Medusa, the Silver Templars, the Dark Krakens, who the Dark Krakens are interesting because they would be kind of almost like a navy. They're good for kind of working under the sea. And you have the Raptors, which are just ruthless and pragmatic and just get the job done. You have here the Shadow of the Warp, which kind of does, again, a nice little story about the psychic abilities of the Tyranids. You have some more datasheet abilities, and Scenario 14, which is the Monster Hunt, which brings in the Termagants into a scenario for you. Now, we have, of course, the different sprues here, and I have the minis assembled, but we'll have a quick look at the sprues just so you can see what you can get. So in issue 17, you would get these sprues. Now, I think they are different, and I'm just seeing if the sprue has been repeated in any shape or form. So the answer is no. There are 3 different sprues. So these would be 3 different sprues spread out over the 2 magazines, and of course you get all the bases here. So the Termagants themselves are kind of a new version of the classic Tyranids, and to be honest with you, they look very well. They're very dark, very creepy, very streamlined. There's not a major change in them, but there is kind of great versatility in them, so that all the poses of these guys would be slightly different. I mean, in different aspects, like there'd be minor differences, such as the tongue is sticking out in this guy, whereas the tail would be in a similar position to the other. Or you would have just the weapon held up at a slightly different angle. You have, again, the weapon at a slightly different angle. and the tongue out. So there are minor differences, but there are differences in the termagants. And it does feel like a little bit of a horde painting army. So the thing about Tyranids is there is a lot of them. So if you do decide to go on a color scheme, make sure it's an easy one. So again, I did have fun painting them. I used a fairly simple base paint of black with a little bit of dry brush lead belcher with Incubus darkness green and a bit of moot green to kind of give layers to the scales. And it was enough to kind of give the... I was going for an alien from like Sigourney Weaver, Alien and Aliens type of look for them. And yeah, I was happy enough with it because I found the standard Behemoth or Leviathan or Hydra Tyranids kind of a bit too colourful for my taste, and I just found that this was a nice quick colour scheme to kind of work on and put together. But you do get a lot of them, and they are a bit of fun to paint. So, I mean, the other handy thing about painting Tyranids is as soon as you painted your first 2 or 3, you actually get quite good at painting them, and you will automatically speed up. Now, some people do batch painting, or some people do kind of factory assembly line painting. I prefer to kind of paint each model from start to finish. I don't know why, it's if I never go back to the models, I'll at least have some of the actual section done. But again, they are quite nice, they stand out quite well, and there is a real cool aspect that if you put a lot of them together, you can kind of see the tails slithering back like that. So there's a kind of a sense of a swarm or a shoal or anything like that. You also get a little ripper swarm, which are these little things, nasty little yolks. Again, they're kind of like the face hugger in Aliens after, or the chest buster after it kind of comes out of the person, that they're just skittering around the ground and just eating anything that they come across. But nevertheless, I also like this model because, you know, it's Games Workshop have done good design in the sense that there's good life in it, if you know what I mean. They seem fluid, they seem that they're skittering along at a kind of a crazy pace and keeping up with the actual termagants themselves. But nevertheless, that is issue 17 and 18 of Combat Patrol. A good issue, a pity it was spread out over 2, but nevertheless a good way to kind of buff up your Tyranid army. So as always, if you enjoyed these videos, please like, subscribe, all that good YouTube stuff, and until next time, this is Sean, signing off.